The topic of discussion is, again, about cybersecurity. And, a few minutes before we were discussing that cybersecurity is one of the most difficult jobs ever. The reason why it's so difficult is because there's no other business model where someone else is trying to bring down your job. In cybersecurity, there are two different parts. You have the attackers and the defenders. The attackers make money by attacking. The defenders make money by defending. So every day, they're on a cat and mouse game with each other, trying to bring down each other's business. So it's a very changing, evolving landscape that if you don't keep updated with what is happening, it's a very difficult space to be in. Having said that, I would want to start the discussion with one of the, to Mridul on primarily. So one of the things I want to add to is that in the cybersecurity space, right, the attackers don't have a rule book, while the defenders have a rule book to play with. They can do whatever they want, but the attackers always has to stick to their rule book. To start with, I would start the question to Mridul. Do you have something to share in this perspective on the rules and regulations that has come up, which kind of hinders your work in moving forward?
So I think it's in continuation of the session we were having just now. So while we will discuss, the cat and mouse game, but I think it's pertinent for everybody to realize, because sometimes what happens in the technological world, we are too focused on what we have to do technically. The regulatory framework is also something that is hinging upon, and specifically coming back to what we are now seeing in India while we talked of GDPR. I think we need to be aware that there are regulations which are existing which have to be complied with. Specifically, if we talk of the IT Act, we talk of the Aadhaar Act, and there is also the data protection framework. The draft was put out, I think, December last year, which will have some semblance from what GDPR is saying, but you are going to have this regulation in India also very soon. So very broadly, when we're talking of financial transactions and we're talking of financial institutions and protecting data, it is very important for us to realize that what is the sensitive personal information, what does it mean? And when we talk of saying that what is the hygiene we are using to make sure that this data is sourced properly, it is stored properly, it is used with ample caution. And I think we need to be aware of the fact that your passwords, your account information, even your religion, your medical records, biometric information, all of that is sensitive personal information. There is extensive use of Aadhaar now in financial transactions, and there has been a lot of debate that we have seen again on protection of the citizen, very, very sensitive information, their biometrics. Now, when we use that in financial institutions, especially when we are authenticating transactions, protecting this information through vaulting and doing tokenization also becomes very important. And definitely, let's see how the whole landscape now evolves with the data protection framework that India now also enacts. So very broadly, I think we need to be aware of these, and we need to imbibe them in our daily working as we see it.
So, Mridul, you mentioned about the credentials and sensitive information like the Aadhaar, which is being linked to a lot of things. So my question is to Midhilesh. These credentials or these assets, right, which Mridul talked about, how do you see and it's been exposed, and what do you see the way? How do you think it would go forward from here on?
So just to add to what Mridul has just mentioned, regulator has a very key role to play in terms of the security aspect. But as you ask about where this data go after once it's being compromised. So now internet is not only the one place. You will find that dark web, wherein your employee or your competitor, hackers, they all try to sell the credentials or the customer's data in the dark web. So traditional approach of looking into security, cyber security has always been there. And I think we have reached up to a level where we also need to look upon how these kind of data, once it is being compromised, can be retrieved. And whether it should not further be exposed or further it should be misused. So we have to have some kind of approach on dark web monitoring. And when I say dark web monitoring, so nowadays a lot of organizations, it's a very much a niche kind of skills, because you need to have your own persona in the dark web world, then only, and that kind of trust you need to have in that community, wherein you cannot be easily traced back by the hacker group or those community that you are tracing it, and you are also exploring that what all kind of credentials and the customers' data which are residing, and you are monitoring those aspects. So this is one of the area where we as a security professional also need to look upon, that how you can monitor the credentials and the customers' data which are residing on the dark web. Also, to a large extent, between cybersecurity professionals and the people on the other part of the table, it is always a race. It is always a game wherein who want to be the winner, who will be the winner. So getting monitoring of the dark web where you have all those confidential information, it will always help you to also explore that is there any kind of vulnerabilities which are of your environment, be it could be your banks, insurance company, or any industry, which are there getting sold in the dark web, which can be further exploited by the hackers. So you will have an opportunity to bring it down. So those kind of informations are easily available in dark web, and that is what I would suggest, that that's the next level of game where we need to really pull up our socks to be ahead of the cyber criminals and other such kind of entities.
Thanks, Mudalesh. That was quite informative about dark web. One thing I want to add is, if any of you guys are interested to know whether any information which belong to you has ever been leaked on the dark web, if you go to CloudSEK booth, you can actually search your credentials and see whether you are leaked or not, exposed or not. So yeah, feel free to do that. So I mean, so this adds to the growing cost of cybersecurity, right? We have so many new threats coming up, and you need money to protect your assets. So, which is also a growing cost. So my question is to Siddharth, how do you deal with the growing cost of cybersecurity, and what do you think would be, what are the challenges you think?
Actually, a very interesting question. And when we come to the controls and in the area of cybersecurity and technology, the cost of compliance. So whenever we sit in the board meetings or whenever we are there in the senior management meetings, this cost of compliance issue always comes up. That what is it? To what extent do we need to spend on that? I would like to divide that answer into two parts. One is a perception issue, and the other one is an execution issue. So when it comes to the perception issue, I guess it's the responsibility of us as risk managers to ensure that we go ahead and explain all these risks and all these issues to the management in the most simplistic form. The challenge comes when we go ahead and throw jargons, when we go ahead and throw and try to scare them, and that is the point of time there is no understanding at their end. So I remember when I was sitting in the board meeting, I asked my Chief Information Security Officer that the success of the board meeting is not in telling them or highlighting the issues to them. It's making them understand that what exactly is your problem statement. And once you are able to do that, once they are able to acknowledge that, that will be the point of time you'll get all the requisite approvals. The other point that I would like to highlight is the execution issue. Technology, spending money is not the solution to everything. We need to be very clear with our problem statement, what exactly we are looking at. At times, you can go ahead and just change the process, tweak the process, and you would not require a technology. To give you an example, I was actually working on the Aadhaar data in my organization. What we realized was that, and as the last speaker said, that we Indians always want every data. We are very happy with data. But once we get the data, we do not know what to do about it at some point of time. So we did a rationalization exercise that who exactly are the key people who require that data, who are the vendors who require that data. From somewhere around 2000, the list came down to 4 individuals in the company and 2 vendors. And automatically, my cost of compliance was reduced. So while technology can go ahead and provide me that shield, but how many people require that shield? I guess if we are able to do that rationalization exercise, we will be able to go ahead and always look into that aspect of cost of compliance. And the other point that I would like to highlight out here is, especially in the area of cybersecurity, I'll not use the word laggards, but we have been more or less reactive. So what do we do to go ahead and come up the learning curve? So one of the things that probably we have done out there in our organization is actually hire ethical hackers, have people of the same mindset, know what exactly is happening across the world. And to be very honest, there are so many journals, there are so many books, there are so many articles, but what information those people come and provide me, it's far and way ahead, more, I would say, precise, crisp, and helps me in better deployment of the controls. So I guess these are the two things we all as senior management people, we all as risk managers need to be very cognizant about, because that will increase our acceptability, and at the same time it will help safeguard the business interests of the organization. Thank you.
The very important thing to know over there is the awareness, right? I mean, the more the people knows about cybersecurity, the better. I mean, in your organization, the entire employees are aware about the cybersecurity principles, then the better your organization security posture would be. So in case of awareness, I mean, I want to shoot a question at Mehjabeen. I mean, how do you think the user awareness can be improved? What is the road forward for that?
So Rahul, I think a couple of very valid points which Siddharth just touched upon. So he talked about rationalization of processes. Now, rationalization of processes is something that he said that, okay, you can introduce a lot of very high-end technology and very high-end solutions for your environment, but you really need to do a dipstick and see, you know, whether to what processes you need to really apply it, and you need to do a process rationalization. Similarly, you also need to go and companies, many point of time, they have not really done the exercise and checked that, sorted their data and seen that what is the kind of data that is really critical to them or sensitive to them. Basically, it's all spread out there in a complete mess. So those are the kind of rationalization exercises also that companies need to go ahead and do and kind of sort it out in terms of criticality, like the CIA metrics, your confidentiality, integrity, and availability kind of a metrics, which many companies don't do. So that's the first step that they need to go ahead and do. And first of all, sort out things in a way which basically define things and let them know that, okay, this is a thing that I need to safeguard and these are the things that I need to pay attention to. First of all, in terms of their data. User component is a very important component. So while you can put all best of technologies into place, but if you have not safeguarded, or if you have not educated your users, if your users are not aware of what are the kind of steps that they need to take in terms of cyber health or cyber hygiene, then even if you put across a layer that needs to safeguard you, your environment can still be compromised. So maybe companies can, do something like cyber intrusion drills. So just like you have your fire drills in the office, wherein you take steps, wherein you prepare yourself for disaster management, wherein you go ahead and do an exercise and prepare yourself for disasters, and maybe have a checklist handy wherein you'll be prepared to do things that if something goes wrong, these are the XYZ things that I do to prepare myself. So what are the kind of things that I will do if a cyber intrusion happens? So you go ahead and you do a cyber intrusion drill, and those are the dipstick checks that you will do when you will find out that, okay, if something goes wrong, if a cyber attack happens, what are the kind of things that can be done? So those are the cyber hygiene kind of things that you can implement. So user education is something which is very, very important, that needs to be done and kinds to be woven into the fabric of a company. So the C segment, that is kind of educating your board and getting them on board in terms of spending and telling them about the importance of cybersecurity is one thing, which is on the spend part of things. But educating your users is also equally important, because most of the times that is the most gullible part which gets lured into hacking. So all the security breaches which happen, if you look at it, like 50% of it would be malicious intent, but the rest of it can be, attributed to user human error and unintentional part. So at least the malicious part you can't take care of, but the other part is something which really can be addressed if, this kind of things can be addressed. So 100% of the times you will not be able to attend to these kind of, you can't safeguard yourself against these threats. But if you can educate your users, maybe most of the times you'll be able to safeguard yourself against these things.
Do you think that is still adequate enough to prevent any sort of transactional related security issues. You know, when a man-in-the-middle sort of attacks, when transactions happen from the end user and it goes all the way through different networks, attacks can happen over there. So my question is to Siddharth. Do you agree with what Mehjabeen just said? Is there anything additional we can do, not just in the form of awareness, but in form of transactional security?
I fully agree with that. Most of the companies over here who are participating in this in this conference today, I'm sure that each company have a basic level of hygiene and they have those foundational aspects already figured out and they're already at a certain level of maturity. But this is really about the inside out of your security. But I think transactions come outside in. And I really feel that there are some aspects which are similar to fourth party risks. Aspects that are not within your control. When a third party leaks your data, or when a fourth party leaks your data, for example, Equifax leaked the data of American citizens, and suddenly the private information is out there. That can be used to create fake transactions into your system. And I really feel that the solution to that problem lies somewhere in a strong authentication. Know your customers, who's logging into your online services, who's calling into your call centers. I think that is where the integrity of transaction can be improved by implementing some stronger authentication methods. There are technologies available for stronger authentications. Each of you must be aware about two-factor authentication and multiple ways to identify your customers based on their location. So I think if I have to give one takeaway as a CISOs, should not be focused really on the current threats that we have, but we should look at the future. What could be the threats in the future? And really work towards that from today.
One of the challenges I believe the CISO faces is, in a large organization, right, the number of assets which he has to protect keep changing. And not every time he might be in a position to know what might be happening in the organization. There might be a marketing team who would have set up a new server somewhere on the infrastructure. And then the CISO is not aware about this new server, but this server now leaks a lot of credentials about their customers. So my question is to Shashank. In sort of this visibility which the CISO doesn't have, what is your opinion and what do you think would be a solution for this?
Yeah, so internal awareness is one of the things which already may have been told. But when the entire employee strength is keen focus on technology, they tend to make more mistakes. And leveraging public infrastructure or public cloud infrastructure, especially in heavily regulated BFSI segment, we have to be very cautious when we are dealing with financial transactions and information pertaining to them. For example, as a likely marketing team or the sales team would like to highlight how much the effective sales went up when they had a Google campaign running or some digital Facebook campaign as it was being launched. But at the same time, we should be very cautious when we are running such kind of data analytics by using third-party tools, because how much we secure ourselves, we have to also look at the third parties and fourth parties, as Siddharth told already. One of the challenges being is to end-to-end data visibility as to how the data is traveling, not within your end network, but also outside the network. How this data visibility can be tracked and approached that must be looked down upon it. So that would be my point.
So my next question is to Shankar. His full name is Shankaracharya Laskar, which is a pretty cool name. So what is the general trend which you are seeing in this space? Do you have anything to share on that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the compliment on my name first. So as a service provider, what we are seeing is a couple of mega trends in the market. The first mega trend was captured as part of the Digital 2.0 in the morning presentation. That is the IoT. The proliferation of IoT started from when we had smart personal assistants, our smartphone. Gradually, we moved to smart TVs, now smart homes. And this is on our personal front. If we move to the corporate, we are finding that offices are also becoming smart offices now. A multifunction device, which was previously just a peripheral device, now is sitting right at the middle of the enterprise workflow. Similar cases, we are finding that IoT proliferation is so huge that by 2025, it is estimated to be around 80 to 90 billion units. That is a significant proliferation of IoT that we are seeing. The second trend that we are seeing is the intersection of the physical and the digital. Cybersecurity, while it comes within the digital framework, we also need to understand how and where the data is getting created. Physical world moving into digital, paper moving to digital. And it is not only about a one-way movement where the paper is getting digitized and then moving to a digital format into a database where BI, AI, blockchain works and helps us serve our own customers better, but it's also vice versa. Digital is converted to paper at some points in time, but how we are able to manage both the flows of information where it is now almost seamlessly moving from physical to digital and back. That is the second mega trend that we are seeing. The third one that we are looking at, which is part of our discussions today, is the costs of cyber security. Currently, it is estimated to be around $3 trillion, and by 2025, it is estimated to be around $6 trillion. Average cost of record, we discussed in the morning, is somewhere around $140 to $150. The cost of a breach for an organization is around $3.5 million. Incidentally, a couple of things that came out, and it was on a survey that happened last year globally. 64% of large enterprises have said that they have had a breach through a printer at some point in time. Now that is a potential source of breach of information for us. Now, how does these three mega trends evolve to a setup where a service provider like us can fit into the opportunity as well as partner with customers? As it was correctly mentioned in the forum, the role of a third party or a fourth party, the role of internal people, the behavior of people, all these needs to get addressed. And there is a role that a service provider will also play in the customer's journey towards securing his digital assets. And the way, for example, I'll take the example of how Xerox addresses it. In our managed document services, we have a three-tier strategy. The first tier is at the device layer, where we talk about intrusion prevention, we talk about device detection, we talk about whitelisting of applications, which ensures that at the physical hardware layer, the device is protected. Even the hard drive of a printer, which is supposed to contain the organization's critical information, needs to be ensured that the data inside is encrypted, probably even 256-bit encrypted. It needs to be ensured that it is scrubbed within a particular time frame so that if at some point in time the hard drive goes out, the sensitive information is not there. That is at the first layer. At the second layer, what we are talking about nowadays is the user analytics. How does our own internal organization, our employees, behave in their behavior of whether it's printing, whether it's scanning, or similar fields around the physical world. So we need to be able to understand that behavior very well. And once we understand that behavior, we should be able to take either proactive steps in enabling the employees to have a more responsible framework in place, or at some points, even reactive framework need to be addressed. At the third layer, what we see is at the collaboration and content layer. That is where the security around documents, around data, encryption of data, and ability to assess correctly is the role of a service provider. So that is how we see. For example, if you look at 2017, the ransomware attacks that happened, few brands stood out without a single attack and emerged unscathed. Xerox was one of them.
What happens if the marketing team is deploying a server and the information security team or the CISO does not know about that? And it's a self-assessment for all of you sitting out there. If that's actually happening, I would say the basics are wrong. We need to have a right framework in place, and that's period. So if there is a change in the security architecture, it needs to flow through the IT or the information security team. And if there is some changes which are happening without the oversight of these particular individuals, I do not think so that even investing 1 rupee in any of the technology controls will be worth. You might create a pyramid, but the hollow, it will be completely hollow because the foundation would not be. So if you feel that this is happening in your organization, it's wrong. Let's go ahead and have a robust framework, because any any architectural change which can have an impact needs to follow through minimum standards, through minimum governance principles. Let's have them in place, let's get the basics right, and then let's build on the pyramid of technology infrastructure. And that's where the process and the framework actually plays a very important role.
So my question is to Aviz. And in terms of these two things which you said about hardware, in your organization, how do you handle about destroying a hardware which has been used, which has been having any confidential information? How do you handle such issues?
If you look at the secure transaction and then providing an assurance to the end users like all of us. So basically, what we expect from a BFSI company? So we expect the transaction should be easy, seamless, and the transaction should be secure. So whether the transaction is a financial transaction or a non-financial transaction. Then if you look at, okay, what could be the possible risks, then we all of know there could be impersonation, there could be unauthorized access, there could be a loss of data, and there's a personal identification and data also can be lost, and like other panelists was telling, it may be available in the dark web and other things. And all these transactions are also available in our servers, in the maybe available in the local laptops, in the local storage of the PCs, and all these things. And if you look at what are the technology solutions available in the market, there are plenty of technology solutions are available. But however, we need to think back that all these technology solutions are good enough. But my perspective is probably it may not be good enough, but along with these technology solutions, like other panelists are telling, we also need to have a people process, along with technology, a good governance, and then basics. The basis, the hygiene of the organizations and the organizational practices. So the technology solutions for a secure transactions which are available, we all know that it has to be a secure socket layer, it has to be a secure protocol, secure HTTP, the server should be secure, and we should have a PCI compliant, and then that should be also monitored day in, day out. Then another, this biometric also providing an ample opportunity for a second factor authentication or biometric authentication probably which cannot be hacked. We don't know, probably in future it may be hacked, but till now it cannot be hacked because it needs a physical presence of the consumers. However, along with that, when as a company, when we integrate with a payment gateway company, and we assure our consumers that, okay, when you do a transaction with our company and do a payments, then your information or your transaction is secure. Then also we need to take some steps, like my other panelists has told that we need to hire ethical hackers to test it. And probably I am sure that all of us may be testing also the payment gateways. So by just knowing that the payment gateway is PCI compliant, I think it is not good enough. We must test the interface between our systems and the payment gateway. And the interface which is linking to the payment gateway. Maybe it may require to go inside the payment gateway, but however we should take permission from the payment gateway, and we must test the ethical hacking kind of things, or red teaming exercise kind of things for those areas. And the hard disk part, which we are just discussing, the informations which are stored in the hard disk, when it is disposed, there must be a secure disposal practice of the company. So when the hard disk is sold or when the assets are being sold, it must pass through a toll gate, which should ensure that it is secure enough. The data has been deleted permanently. Either it may be a 7 times formatting or a low-level formatting, or it is a destroy of the hard disk, whatever may be. So the secure disposal process must be followed to assure the consumers of a secure transactions and to assure the consumer that their information with a BFSI company is secure and protected.
My last question is to Rajendra. In this panel, we have 3 banks, 3 insurance companies, Xerox and us, and NPCI, which is one of the companies which gets attacked a lot. I was asked specifically to not ask anything related to them. So I would want to just open the floor. I mean, I just want him to, give his perspective of what he can share with us.
One of the important example was related to the marketing scenario. the server getting exposed. What I feel is like, the current situation when we say like, we have to be proactive and not reactive. So while we adhere to our compliance, all practices, our processes, everything is in place, user awareness is all done and all. And if everything is 100%, then we as professionals are not required. So in that particular case, one proactive action, what I feel is like, have a daily scan. You have a range of IP addresses, what is getting exposed, or different servers which is there, and you can get linked to your security operations center. You identify and then proactively highlight that as an incident internally, whatever category you want to highlight it. So that's one way of proactively handling that as an that incident. Coming on to the entire the banking sector. So we have a dedicated MPLS, and while we conduct regular ethical hacking practices and all, so a couple of different certified ethical hackers from certain been onboarded, and then they follow the normal practices and generate the report. Then we have the third governing body who comes and assesses that report also and the processes, which we forwarded to RBI as well. Plus, at the same time, when we get the onboarding of the banks, so our high-level certification process, rigorous certification process is onboarded, unless and until we get a proper certain certified report, like, the whatever vulnerability assessment application security is being conducted by banks. So we don't authorize them to be onboarded. And that's a very clear-cut, order from our managing director also, that we have to ensure that the compliance is met. And that's the reason Mrudal sir and all, they always ensure that they support us. So that's it from that perspective. But since a lot of SIs are over here, one thing what I want to suggest is, like, we are a lot dependent on y'all, and regarding your products and all, then your threat intelligence that has been given to us. So if you all come together and help us, that would be great beneficial, because earthquake in, say, Philippines is not something that will affect me, but a cyber incident at Philippines, with what vector it has happened, that will definitely help me out. So you are the key people for me, who generate all the data, but ensure that it gets circulated to the right forum also. The ministry, the government agencies are also working very hard to ensure that the frameworks are in place and the processes are also followed. While we have the privacy, which India had already thought about, say, in 2012, which was already been released by DSEA. Of course, it didn't pick up that good. But now that the ministry is also taking a lot of efforts to develop one, that particular standard will really help to ensure compliance related to privacy as well.